Hi everyone! So the video for Wednesday that I'm filming right now is for subtraction across zeros. This is what your worksheet should look like. So you have all sorts of subtraction problems with a few word problems. And since there won't be a video for tomorrow, since it's just a review, I'll show you what that sheet should look like as well. So this is for Thursday, and you'll see some subtraction and some addition problems. And those are also with the word problems. So just be very careful with your review, making sure that you're actually doing subtraction for the subtraction problems, addition for the addition problems, and you don't just mix them up and continue going on. So today's will be a brief video. It's actually very similar to the video for Tuesday, which was just subtraction. I think it was Tuesday, subtraction in general. So I'm going to start right here at the top. So there's 60 minus 52. So the first thing that you're going to do, as we've done in the videos in the past, is we've gone to the ones column, and you can see that it's 0 subtract 2. So if you have 0 cookies and you try to take 2 of them away, it's not possible. There's not enough. So you're going to have to borrow, just like we did before. So we turn that 6 into a 5, and then we carry the 1 so that the 1's place becomes a 10. And really what we're doing in that process is we're borrowing a 10. So we're borrowing one of the 10s because we know that the 6 here is actually 60. So we're turning that 60 into a 50, and we're stealing that 10 or borrowing that 10 so we can use it to help us in the 1's place. So then we have 10 minus 2, which is 8. And we can do that because we borrowed that 10, and the number is now above 2. And then when we go to our 10's place, we have 5 minus 5, which is 0. So you can put the 0 down, or you can just put nothing, and the answer is 8. We're going to move on over here. So this one's a little different because there's 2 zeros. So that's actually what it means, I forgot to say. When it's subtraction across zeros, what they mean by that is that the number ends in zeros at the top. So we know that if the number at the top ends in zeros and the number below doesn't end in a 0, then you're going to have to borrow, and sometimes you're going to have to borrow more than once. So here there's 3 zeros, so we're going to have to borrow 3 times. We're going to have to borrow 2 times for the 2 zeros, and again here 2 zeros, so we're going to have to borrow twice. Because if there's zeros up top and there's numbers below them, any number that's above 0 is you're going to have to borrow, because you can't take anything away from 0. So the way that works is that you borrow from the 10's place and then make the next 0 into a 10. But I'll show you how that works with 2 zeros. So 0 minus 8, you obviously can't do. Then you go to borrow, but what are you supposed to borrow from 0? Because the 0 is also in the 10's place. So you can't borrow 0 from 0. So you're going to have to go all the way over again and borrow from the 100's place. So we're going to change that 4 into a 3. So we're now borrowing not a 10, but a whole 100, because we were at 400 because it's in the 3rd place value over, which is the hundreds. And we had to borrow 1, which turned it into 300. So then we're going to not carry it all the way to the 1's place, because if we had 300 in the 1's place, that would just be crazy. So we actually just bring it over to the 10's place and make this one 10. And then cross it out and make it a 9. And then make this one a 10. So that was a lot of steps, but let me walk you back through that one. So we pretend that my writing is not there. So we had to borrow from this 0 to that 0. There wasn't enough for this 0, so we had to borrow from the hundreds. So we had to cross off that 100 just like we would normally do when borrowing, like we did over here. But instead you bring it right to the 10's. I like to make it a 10 and then cross it out and make it a 9, just so that my brain can visually see that we carried that over to the 10's place, and then we're borrowing as if that one was a 9. So that's the way that I like to see it. If there's a different way that you like to see it, where you just write automatically the 9 and you don't even put the 10, then that's fine. But just make sure that you can kind of keep track of it. I know it kind of looks confusing to look at, but when you know the steps that you just took, then you know why there's a little 1 and a little 3. So now we can do 10 minus 8, which is 2, 9 minus 6, which is 3, and you have to make sure that when you borrow that from that second 0, so if you were to borrow from the 3 or borrow from the 4, so that you have 300, and then you carry that 1 all the way to the tens place, if you forget to do this tens place, let me write it out as an example. 268. So say we went to do this first column and we crossed out the 4, made it a 3, and then brought it right to the ones place. Then we did the 10 minus 8 is 2. Then we went to this next column, we would say, oh, we need more, and we'd borrow more. But you've already actually borrowed enough. So this is not what you want to do. I was just giving you a little non-example. So that's something to look out for. And then up here you have the 3 minus the 2, which is 1. So the answer is 132. So that was 2 zeros. We're going to do 2 zeros one more time. And that's the most that you will see on your worksheet. We actually don't go into the thousands, even though you guys go into the thousands place in class. So feel free to practice that on your own. It's actually kind of fun to do the zeros, I think, because you're doing all this borrowing and you could see how big and crazy of a number that you can subtract, because 7,000 minus 4,576 looks crazy, but you guys all have the skills to be able to do that, or to be able to do 70,000 or 700,000 or a million. So it's something that you could do to challenge yourself if you wanted to. So enough of my ramble, back to the problem. So we have 0 minus 1, which we can't do. If you have 0 cookies, you can't take away one of them. So we move on to the next place value to borrow, which is a 0. So we're going to have to move on to the next place value, which is a 2. So we cross out that 2 and make it a 1. I like to make the tens place. Now it would be a 10 because we took away 1 from the 2, made this one a 10, and you cross out the 10 and you make this one a 9 because we're borrowing 1. That's often the forgotten step, so don't forget to do that. And then now we're up to 10, so we can do 10 minus 1 is 9. Then remember, 9 minus 4 is 5. We're borrowing from that 9, not from that 10. And then we had crossed out our 2 to make it a 1. So we have 1 minus 0, which is 1. So the answer would be 159. So now we'll do this crazy number over here, which is 7,000 minus 4,576. It's a mouthful. So it's the same thing, but basically we are going to have to look all the way ahead to the 7, carry that 1 all the way back through each of these values, and then we start subtracting. So we would turn that 7 into a 6, which we're actually borrowing 1,000 this time, because we know that this 7 stands for 7,000, and we're crossing it off and we're making it 6,000. So then we'd make this place 100, because it's in the third place value, so it's 100. But or 1,000, because we're carrying the 1,000 over. But we change that from the hundreds place value. So the third place value over is the hundreds place value. So we're going to cross that out, make it 9, and carry that 1 over to the tens place. Then we're going to cross that off, make it a 9 again, and make this one a 10. So if you need to rewind the video so you can watch that one again, then go right ahead. So 10 minus 6 is 4. And remember, we pull from the 9, not from the 10, because these two 10s were already crossed off and turned into 9s. So we use the 9. So 9 minus 7 is 2. 9 minus 5 is 4. And 6 minus 4 is 2, with the answer of 2,424. And so something cool that I'll show you guys off to the sides is similar to with the last subtraction video, that it's really easy to check your work by actually adding the two numbers that the one number that you subtracted and that second number that was the total at the end. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because addition and subtraction are inverse numbers or inverse operations, so they kind of do the opposite. So say up here we did 60 minus 52 equals 8. So we can actually do 52 plus 8 to check our work. So you add these two together and it should equal 60. So let's check. So we have 8 plus 2 is 10. 5 plus 1 is 6. So it's 60. So 60 isn't the answer to the problem because the answer is still 8, but that's a great way to check your work, because if you were to not get 60, then you know that you did something wrong, because these two numbers should always equal that number at the top, or the first number that you subtracted from. So that's just, I like to put a little check to show that I checked my work. And this is, we always tell you guys to go back and check your work after a worksheet. So this is a great way to go back and check your work. You can either do it at the end like I'm doing, or you could go problem by problem. So for example here, 200 minus 41 equals 159. So you should be able to add these two. So 9 plus 1 is 10. 5 plus 4 plus 1 is 10. And 1 plus 1 is 2. So check. So you guys can do that for all those problems and all the problems that you have on your worksheet. So now I'm briefly going to go over an example of a word problem. So it says, the farm collected 90 eggs on Monday. They sold 38 of them by noon. How many do they have left to sell? So the reason why I circled those two numbers is because sometimes there are just a lot of words thrown in there to either kind of throw you off or to see if you can pull the correct numbers. Sometimes there'll be another number. And so you just want to make sure that you're circling the most important parts. So 90 eggs, they sold 38 of them by noon. How many did they have left to sell? So I only did noon because I didn't want to trick you guys, but say they had said 1 p.m. or 11 a.m., then some people might say, oh, that's a number, and circled it. But you want to make sure that you're just focusing on the number that's being talked about, or the number that they're subtracting from. So they're taking away 38 eggs of those 90. So we would set that up like this. 90 minus 38, it looks a lot like this problem up here, 60 minus 52, where it's a one digit. So we have the 0 and we need to borrow. So we cross off that 9 and make it an 8. We then make this a 10. We have 10 minus 8, which is 2. 8 minus 3, which is 5. So 52 is our answer, or 52 eggs. That's what they had left to sell. So again, this is the worksheet that you'll be working through today. And like I said, there's the 1 0, 2 zeros, but the most you're going to see is 2 zeros. So if you want to challenge yourself and create your own problems that end in 3 or 4 zeros, then that would be so great for all of you, and really great practice. And good luck with your review tomorrow and then your EdSpeed test on Friday. So have a great day, boys and girls.